My name is Ryan Koo. I'm the founder of the website No Film School. I'm also a Sundance Labs alum with my Netflix feature, Amateur. And just always love coming back to Sundance. It feels like home. And also I owe my career to Sundance. So always happy to be here. And today's special because some of these artists just came from their premiere. But I want to introduce everyone first. I'll tell you who they are and what movie they worked on, and then I'll ask for a little more than that, since some of these movies you guys have not seen, probably. And the big question is, will my voice hold up to an hour panel, since we've all been at high altitude, talking late at night, and possibly drinking alcohol? So yeah, let's get started. From Sunfish and Other Stories on Green Lake, is the full title, composer Brian Steckler and costume designer Ruth Araujo. From If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, production designer Carmen Navis. And from Love, Brooklyn, editor Shawn Paper. So let's just go in that same order and tell our audience something about your film, since they might not have seen it, so that they'll have context for the next hour of our discussion. Do you want to start, Brian?
Me? Oh, sure. Sunfish is a anthology-style movie. It's got 4 short vignettes that are tied together around Green Lake, Michigan, which is in northern Michigan, where Sierra, our director, is from. Is that enough?
Yeah. And I guess that covers both of you. So, Ruth, anything to add?
No, this is a small town that we try to portray, and so far the reviews have been just saying that you can feel the lake and you can almost breathe the air on the lake. So apparently we did a pretty good job.
Nice. And Carmen, how about If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You?
I guess I would call it a meditation on motherhood, but it's this descent with this character whose life is collapsing around her. Her daughter is suffering from a pretty serious illness, and her husband is absent. So it's quite like psychological and singular perspective on our lead, Rose Byrne. Yeah.
And Shawn, how about Love, Brooklyn?
I just got back from the screening of Love, Brooklyn. Luckily, I made it here. We almost got stuck in the parking lot.
An Eccles premiere. You know what that means. That's a big one.
So Love, Brooklyn is it's the director and the writer's love song to Brooklyn. It's a rom-dram about what life is like in Brooklyn, how these characters live, love, and try to evolve as the city is evolving around them.
Great. Before we get to the questions of craft, I want to know personally how you found your way to this profession and this crazy industry, and what your path was to get there. We'll go in the same order.
Well, I was born in I went to school for music. I was a piano performance major. I've had a long career in music, starting in jingles in Nashville, and then moved to LA to do record production and songwriting, and then transitioned slowly into production music and library music and that kind of stuff. And that sort of led me to working to picture, and then some films, and then Sunfish.
How many features have you worked on?
I think it's 7 or 8 now, something like that. Yeah.
And how about you, Ruth?
So my parents wanted me to be a musician, and they took my sister and me to the opera a lot. So I wasn't really interested in the music. I was more interested in the garments and everything that I saw on stage. So I went into fashion school because I thought it was like more through that route, but I found out that I needed more of a collaboration environment. So I started hanging out a lot with my friends who were in film school and transitioned into costume design. There's no costume design programs. I'm from Mexico City. There's no costume design programs there, so I had to move to LA. I got my master's at UCLA, and that's where I met Sierra and had the fortune of working in Sunfish.
Well, you went to film school, so you have to leave the panel.
Not technically, I didn't. You know,
Oh.
it was my fashion school had a adjacent film program. You know, so it was technically fashion school, but I was hanging out with the film kids. So.
I took film classes as an undergrad, so I'm a hypocrite myself. Carmen, how about you?
Yeah, I studied commercial art in high school, and so I kind of pigeonholed myself, and I had to go to a liberal arts or art school. And I got a scholarship to Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design. I was going to be a design major, but I was really captivated by these women making large-scale installation and industrial. They had an industrial sculpture program, so I studied industrial sculpture for 2 years, and then I became really interested in video art, and my mentor was basically like, you gotta go. So, because, you know, I was really more focused on that medium than the casting and carving and mold making, although that has informed a lot of my work. So I did a quick little directing workshop at USC to see if it was, you know, the right medium, and then I quickly transferred to Columbia College Chicago, where I met my film family, and you know, that's where I got my start.
Nice.
Yeah.
How about you, Shawn?
So I was a theater and literature major in college with some of my friends over here from Bennington College and my wife from Bennington College. Close to graduation, my theater director, or theater instructor, sat me, a friend, and me down and said, "You're both very good actors, but you're not going to work, and you're not going to get steady work until you're 40 or in your 40s." And I said, "Well, I'm not going to wait that long." And Pete Dinklage said, "Okay, I'll wait." So Pete Dinklage stayed with it and became Pete Dinklage, and I fell in love with film, and realized that working behind the scenes was where I could, was like putting a puzzle together. And once I sat down and I realized that I could get paid for putting a puzzle together all day, it all kind of clicked.
I love the editing process once you've gotten through all the blood, sweat, and tears, and you have what you have. Let's follow up on that, Shawn. So you get the footage in that everyone has killed themselves to get in the can, and you're starting to edit. At what point do you feel like the footage is speaking to you in terms of the pacing and the rhythm, and like, do you come in already knowing that with the director, or are you feeling it out? Like, what was that like on Love Brooklyn?
It also editing depends on the project and the audience. So I had come from editing the Outer Banks TV series, and the Outer Banks TV series, the pacing is basically as quickly as you can cut between angles and keep the thing moving forward. And sometimes you have 6 different shots to get one sentence out. And Love Brooklyn, Rachel Abigail Holder told me, she said, feel the lyricism, feel the scene, and when you can, live in the experience. And she allowed me to experiment and play with the lyricism of and the syncopation of dialogue, looks, feelings, breaths. And it's you can feel the poetry of a film like this, and it's sort of I didn't need to impose a pace on it. It was organic, and I just I just pulled myself back and let the film speak to me.
Was there a particularly a favorite sequence that sticks out in your mind, is the most enjoyable to edit, or?
Yeah. So the interesting thing is that one of the first scenes that I cut was one of the first scenes of the movie, which was this really well written, waiting for Godot type of scene where everybody's talking about something happening and nothing is happening, and it was so fun and playful, but it was waiting for Godot in that nothing was happening, and you can't. It's hard to do that for like a first scene of the movie, and it sort of dictated how the two main characters play with each other. And I loved the sequence, but I also knew that we needed to, screen time, we needed to get to the first 8 minutes of the show, of the film, before we could allow that sort of thing to happen. So unfortunately, this wonderful, playful scene, which there are several between the two main characters, but the first one, which dictated how this went, that I loved, was that was on the cutting room floor.
Maybe the DVD special
That's
features.
right, DVD extras.
I don't know where those are anymore since none of us. Maybe if you buy it on Amazon, there's extras built in. Criterion, there we go. We should start publishing more of those on No Film School. Behind the scenes stuff.
I've got them. Yes, sure.
Yeah, send it to us. We'll do a. You can explain it and everything. So let's go jump to the other side and talk about music. Brian, at what stage did you get involved and find out about the project? Were you composing while they were shooting, or did you see it? Did you see a cut later, and how was that collaboration?
Yeah, with Sunfish, it was I came in actually very late. The first cut that I saw was in really good shape. Like the flow was all there already, and Sierra had temped some music, so she was communicating the feel and tone that she was going to want for the music very early on. Well, early on for me, late in the game for them. I mean, they were still tweaking with the edit, but it wasn't going. Most of what they were messing with wasn't going to affect anything I was doing, because the music in Sunfish is very sparse. Like it only pops in at the right moments, and so it made for. It made the music feel bigger than it sounds, and she was very clear that that's how it was going to work from the very beginning. And even a couple times she had to be like, "Yeah, that was cool, but let's bring it back a little bit."
How many cues or how much music is in the film?
I think there's a lot of music because she licensed some songs and stuff for it. But I think my score is 20 minutes, something like that. Yeah, it's on a 87 or whatever it is minute movie. That's not a lot of music compared to usual. So
Yeah, I always like asking composers about their feelings on temp score, because this is the first time you're seeing the movie, right? And having been through rough cut screenings of my own movie, sometimes there's so much energy spent on talking about the temp score, and as a director, you're like, what are you talking? It's gonna all be. I'm not gonna go try to find another piece of music that's not gonna be in the movie and spend time on that.
Yeah.
So when you hear it, are you trying to unhear it, or how is that?
I don't mind it. It's always about understanding what the director's vision is. Like, I have to go off something, and so then it really clarifies. There's a reason that they chose that temp score, and if I can understand what that reason is, that's a much shorter route than them trying to explain to me without the temp score what it is that they actually want for that scene or whatever. So I'm always happy to hear temp score, and I like the step closer to what we need to finish with that it gives me, even though I know that I'm going to at some point disregard it so that I can create the cohesive through line through the movie that temp score can't do. There's no way it can do it. So plus fitting the scene properly and giving us the emotional peaks at the right place that, you can choose a piece of temp score that has an emotional peak and spot that to the picture, but the whole rest of the cue doesn't work. The only thing that works is that one emotional spot. And so getting closer to the vision from the first step, I'm great with every time. So.
And a lot of directors are not musicians, so they maybe don't have the vocabulary.
Oh yeah.
For me, I learned this lesson by going to a barber for years and trying to describe what I wanted instead of just showing up with the picture.
Right.
It's like, it's much better shortcut.
Yeah, that's exactly how I look at it. Yeah.
Well, let's stick with Sunfish. Ruth, how early were you involved, and You know, did you? I guess similar question to what I asked Shawn. Do you feel like the characters when you're reading it are speaking to you, or what was the process like of figuring out, you know, what they're going to be wearing?
Yeah, despite like my other experiences with other films, usually they contact me for some reason, like with very little time to work on stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, you got a month to create those characters. And it's like, okay, cool, thank you. Sierra was great about it. She contacted me like 6 months before or something like that. I had a long time to explore who these people were. And so we had a couple of conversations about what she wanted to see in them, who they were, like their background, who they were outside of the movie, and who they were like even after the movie, like where are they moving on to and stuff like that, so that we could have a whole arc and create a rounded character per se. And then, as I said, I'm from Mexico City. Had never been to the Midwest before this, so it was absolutely foreign to me. So I started doing like research on very general like Midwestern stuff, but then I realized how peculiar Green Lake is, and how like a tight community, and how it's like in its own kind of time period and place. So I started looking at photographs from the people in Green Lake, and I found a website where they upload all their community photos. You know, like 4th of July picnics, their summer camp out there, fishing competitions, all of that. So I started picking through all of those things and seeing like the similarities. And I learned a lot about these people, but then again, when we were there, the DP, production designer, and I traveled 2 weeks before everybody else and kind of inserted ourselves in this community. And being there and seeing the people and interacting with them also fed entirely the process of creating these characters. And you know, like people in Green Lake are excited to jump in the lake in their own clothes. So a lot of the clothes, like I knew they had to be like, okay, so you're just gonna jump in this clothes in the lake, you know, and you're like gonna be happy about it. So it had to work like that. And I shopped a lot at Goodwill and thrift stores out there. So I was basically shopping from the closets of people in Green Lake to create the characters that lived in Green Lake. And you know, Sierra was amazing because everything I showed her, she was like, yeah, I'm happy. Like, are you happy? And you know, she gave me a lot of just room to play and just to put what I thought was right in front of the camera, and it was amazing in that way.
Did you feel like the costume design is reflecting a character arc, and how does her wardrobe change over the course of the film?
Yeah, I mean, one of the ones where you can see it a lot more is in the first part of the anthology on Sunfish, because this is a girl that comes in with nothing but her backpack and her own personal clothes, and finds a box of the clothes that her mom used to wear when she lived in this house. So you are seeing Lou wear clothes that are reflective of who her mom is. So you can see an arc in Lou with what she's wearing and how comfortable she gets with the lake, and like at some point she gets better like equipment to be in the Sunfish, but at the same time you're seeing who her mom that you only met for a really short period of time was, and how she's detached from that and is like the center of why she stepped away from her parents in this house and her child. So, you know, thinking of all of that made this character's pretty solid and round.
Great. In terms of the physical world that we see on screen, Carmen, how did you approach the visual language for If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You?
I think like all of us, we get a script, and you break it down, and you're looking for visual cues. And I was lucky, Mary Bronstein, my director and writer, this story is very close to her. We had talked about it many years before it was actually made. So, but when I met on it, you build a deck, and so building that language you're informed by the research, what you're drawn to. I'm looking for visual patterns, the rhythm in the images I'm drawn to, color palette, color stories. So for me, Mary and I had this like unique overlap with inspiration. We both are around the same age, and we were both inspired by similar artists. So I think once you like gather up the research and these images, you start to see that you're building a world based on your favorite works, and then you're looking for the nuance there. And for me, like the visual motif was very much written into the script. Mary is very descriptive. She's very visual. There's a lot of density to, like, there's a big foundation. I knew that her and our DOP, Chris Messina, they were very close. They've been talking about this project for many, many years. And so their like mise en scène, that what they had already established, their way of shooting, was going to be very expressive and very much claustrophobic, limited to Rose Byrne, Linda, her point of view. And that was kind of the guidelines, right? There's a framework you get from your director, you know, what's important. And for Mary, it was that we were, so it gave me the opportunity to actually be quite imaginative, because everything I was designing didn't have to be so grounded in reality. My theme, my design concept was perception versus reality, and you know, control, healing, transformation, and this entire journey that you're on with Linda is about control and the separation that she feels from her environment and the systems that run her life. So the color story I came up with was quite tertiary, so that I could be really expressive in these different environments. If Linda, for example, has a therapist, and you know, in the office, I used a lot of muted tones because she's quite restrained and she really is putting on a role for her clients. And then when she's in her therapy session with you know, her therapist, she is very vulnerable. So I used like more saturated tones. And I would say that there is like a very, there's an impetus to this journey that you go on with her, and it starts in her most intimate space. And so that was a very nice opportunity to use, you know, these red-violet, you know, basically the color scheme is red-violet, rust orange, blues, greens, very like mixed, and, you know, primary, secondary. So we could really develop this provoking, you know, composition in color. And then also there's something that happens that begins this collapse, and that is like a repeating shape that I bring into the film. So there's this visual motif of circular imagery. I'm looking at it like in all these subversions where like the circular shape could be a portal, it could be a void, it could be you know, a destruction or an ascension. So we're really kind of playing with high concepts. We referenced a lot of older films, Possession, you know, Polish cinema, Soviet cinema, Tarkovsky's Mirror, like really esoteric film work. And then we also had this unique opportunity to meet before the crew landed and spend a lot of time playing with how we were going to execute some of these spaces, because the environments were amorphous. So, you know, when you're designing a film, usually you have an environment. It's an interior of a warehouse. One of our environments was called the Void. And so that left a lot of opportunity to be quite playful, and knowing that Mary, it was very important for her to be in camera with everything. That was a unique opportunity for me to call back to my sculpture roots, and then also, you know, work with my DOP on techniques that we had all kind of been familiar with, but like almost as lore. So we used this this old late 19th century technique that magicians used before filmmaking began, and it's called Pepper's Ghost. And so we were like playing with mirrors and glass, and we were just going and getting raw materials in the office and putting water in a fish tank and shooting each other, and it was like film school. I mean, it really felt, it was so refreshing because I hadn't been on a project where I was able to be so playful and so free, and because Mary is so specific about her vision, it was really nice because, you know, the costume designer, like you said, Ruth, you guys don't get the same amount of time, and that's such a disservice to how much your work is a part of what we're doing. But Mary also had a very close relationship with Elizabeth Warren, our costume designer. And it was funny because every time we would all come together, even though it felt quite disparate, we would realize that she was so clear that our work all really created this very unique language that that she provided for us, you know. And so it was really exciting and fun because I've never done, you know, so many conceptual, high concept sets with a narrative, you know, world.
Yeah, let's stick with that theme of collaboration. For any of you, can you recall something where collaborating with another department led to something unexpected or something other than what you had in mind that was new and fresh?
Well, I appreciate what you said earlier, Brian, when you said that you didn't mind temp music, because sometimes I've done something creative, and the composer would come in, and I'd be like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to give you like this 40-piece orchestra that you're going to have to do a MIDI sample of to try to make, and because there's so much temp love, you're just going to have to follow. So collaboration with a composer is a lot of fun, because once you get to the point where a film is ready to breathe and have the instrument of music to be a character in it, it really it elevates it. And it's one of my favorite parts of the process is going to the mix stage and hearing what you've taken from my temp and taken it to a completely other level. Because yes, I've hit that one beat, that one emotional beat, and I hit it really hard, and it worked really well, and everything else was kind of a pad to get there. And when I see that the beat is not only serviced, but the rest of the piece is elevated, it's always a joy.
From my side of that, working with an editor, that I see with a piece of temp music and I see the reasoning behind some of the hits and the cuts, it's fun to, when I take the temp away, and you know, often if there is a lot of temp love, sometimes I'm using the same musical tempo, so that I can hit the same spots kind of in the same musical way, but to hopefully bring you back something that not only hits all the things you needed it to, but fills in those gaps and then ties it to the rest of the film and the choices that you're making in the length of your cuts or the intensity of the moments that you've made in picture shifts, whatever you call them. I'm a composer. You know what I mean?
We call them picture shifts. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes we flop it. Is it a picture flop?
Yeah.
Picture
Yeah.
flip. Yeah. Sometimes it's upside down, and you know, just like as you were creating through a fish tank. So you know, we'll do whatever we can to collaborate. And sometimes it's working with a production designer. When I was on Ugly Betty, the production designer Mark Worthington had designed these stunning sets for the office that Ugly Betty took place in. It dictated how I edited. It was the first time that I had a collaboration with a production designer where I was playing with the masters, and then the transitions that I made were geometrically connected to what the production designer did. So when there is this synergy, I think it always elevates, because sometimes our departments just don't talk, and when they do, and they complement each other that way.
Yeah, on Legs, it was very specific because I had to work with special effects teams, and we were working with creature artists. Mary was very specific about our execution being in camera, as I said. So our special effects coordinator, Jim Ranker, was really instrumental in bringing our build to life, and that there were all these like descriptors in the writing that was like milky substances and things. So it's like we have this build, we have my art director, Kyra Boselli, her construction coordinator, Pierre. They built these incredible, very like expressive textures. We were using cheesecloth and things, again, like unconventional, like a lot of materiality. And then they need to do something, you know, that's transforming. And a lot of that was like pushing the narrative. So we actually built a scaled version of our set and had puppeteers coming in. And so it's kind of funny because it was really weird. You know, it's very orifice. You know, there's like a lot of very like visceral qualities to this aspect of the design. And I think Chris Messina and Mary did a great job of bringing it together in post because it's very subtle. But so it wasn't so campy. But we were looking at like Nightmare on Elm Street in films that were quite like, you know, you're pushing the fabric down and that's the ceiling or whatever. And then another thing that I thought of was I just designed a Netflix series that's coming out, Mo Season 2, and I was working with my writers on that a bit where we were like designing, you know, an olive oil production. And in one instance, my writer, Harris Denau, was like, well, what is this machinery like? Like, how is this? You know, I'm writing a scene with Samir, and I need to know, like, how would he do this? And then you go, okay, well, it's really heavy, and it's like really, you know, he's going to be struggling a bit, but maybe that makes him feel strong or something, you know. And so then that communication becomes really important because if they're writing a scene where he's like, yeah, this is cool, you know, and it's like, and my team and I are like, this is really hard. So it's so important. The connective tissue between departments is obviously makes it all cohesive, and that's what builds the whole world.
And if you can't, there's always like a YouTube video to say, hey, that's how you do it.
Exactly. No, but we use YouTube for that. I mean, you become an expert at everything.
Yeah, Ruth, I'm curious, collaboration-wise, you know, Carmen was talking about color schemes, and if the costume designer's coming in when a color scheme is already established, what that collaboration, what that conversation's like. When you're shopping at Goodwill, you know you have certain colors to stay away from or to emphasize. Just how's that collaboration been?
So we did have a meeting about color where Sierra showed us like pictures that she wanted to kind of approach and like try to imitate a little bit with this film. But then Emma Skeet, the production designer, sitting right there. We shared a room for 2 weeks. So bed to bed, we were just like staring at the ceiling being like, what are you gonna do for this scene? Like, have you thought about color or anything? You know, and like just, we were shopping together all the time. We had one car that we shared and we would go everywhere. And as I was shopping clothes, she was like, oh, what are you, like, who are you thinking this for what scene? And at the same time, she was shopping for drapes, cushions, stuff to put in the background. So it was the whole time, it was super tight, and we knew exactly what the other one was doing, which had never happened to me in a project where I was shopping next to my production designer and everything was just like talked through to the last little bit. And then at night, Mark was living like in the cabin next door, our DP, and he would come in and he was like, what did you buy? And we would show him and he would see it and he was like, oh, okay, like maybe can we try to like tone this down or switch this color or this sort of thing? Can we change this drape? So it was every single day we were getting stuff, we were having a conversation about how it was gonna look on screen, and probably that is why if you watch Sunfish, you'll see like a super tight image that it just makes sense, and it's so cohesive, because we created a world like just talking the whole time and communicating between all departments the entire time.
Well, I don't just say this because it's costumes, but it sounds like y'all were very tight-knit. Is that a pun? Do I get credit for that? Let's talk reworking. Start with Shawn. Something that wasn't working and you needed to go back and redo, and then if you got it to work, what was the breakthrough? And then if the rest of you now have time to think about this question, whereas I'm putting Shawn on the spot. He's got to think in real time.
Well, so Love Brooklyn was we had this unique opportunity where once we had Rachel and I had gone through and put a working cut together, we screened it for Steven Soderbergh, and Soderbergh he looked at it and he was like, It's like, you ever seen my film, The Limey? And I said, yeah, what are you kidding? It's one of my favorite films, especially for editing. He says, I want you to try liming it up. Like, try liming it up? That, like, I've been waiting all my life for someone to tell me to lime me up, and it seems Spoderberg telling me to lime it up. So there was this. So Rachel and I just like this light bulb went up in our eyes. We were in our head. We were like, okay, well, what if we we created this motif of we don't know if a person's staying or going, and if this riding through Brooklyn sequence is actually present tense, future tense, past tense. And it allowed us to strip away scenes that weren't absolutely essential, and to find a way to filmically be reductive and get to the linear to get to a story that's not and taking out the linear aspect of it, but make it emotionally
That's such a cool experience because, in terms of editing sequences, for those who haven't seen it, The Limey is Terrence Stamp in a Steven Soderbergh film, but there's one particular sequence of him pulling out a gun, and it's chopped up, and it's so nonlinear that it's like an art crime noir film, and it's from the editing that it gets that tone. So that's amazing that you got to have Soderbergh be the one to say, "Hey, do this."
Yes, and Soderbergh actually, after we were done, he told Andre Holland, they're friends. He's like, "Do you want to come over and I'm recutting The Limey." Like he's still recutting it. He loves playing with that footage and playing seeing how if I change it this way, how does that affect a piece of the story later on. I think that's just, as far as editing goes, it's just a wonderful opportunity to see what's really important, see what the essence is, and then see if you can tell that story with an even more, with more narrative compression.
The rest of you, anything that was required a rework and that you had a breakthrough on?
Yeah, I was actually stumped for most of this, and then I just remembered. I was like, oh yeah, and If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. The character of Aesop Rocky, he's played by Jamie's played by Aesop Rocky, and his character is quite undefined. Like he's a little mysterious. He's almost this mystic that comes into Linda's world when she's at her breaking point, and his environment is never written in the script. It's quite abstract, like his role in this place. And she's staying at this like beachy motel in Montauk. And it's clear that Linda is kind of placing herself there to get through this experience. And he is so chill and like in contrast to her energy, just very like the Buddha. And his space was, so the note I got from Mary was, let's create something that's quite visually intense and distracting. And the note is that Linda will never ask about it because to illustrate that she's so wrapped up, she's so limited in what she can see. And the way that we shoot her, there's a lot of very strong choices they make to show how narrow-minded, how in her own world she is. And so, I built, my concept for Jamie was that he was an Etsy artist, and because in real life, Rocky is a sculptor, not just a musician. And he makes really expressive sculptures that are sold on First Dibs for a lot of money. And but I wanted to pick up the visual motif of this circular imagery, and so I created, he's making speakers out of weird materials like bowling bags and just things that don't really make sense. And so they're kind of, his whole place is kind of filled with this stuff that's a little strange. And she goes into his place and she's like, barely sees it. But our producer, Josh Safdie, was not in some of these creative conversations. And so he's I'm very inspired by his work. And so he had a lot of questions about, what we were doing and what's happening in here, I think he read the character maybe a little differently, or, but we had these really great conversations. So you have these creative producers that are, very very much a part of the world we're building, and it's, explaining your vision and also listening to what isn't working. And I think it was a lot of like the way that we had it dressed. It felt a little, perfect. And so it was really nice because I was able to go in, and then while we were shooting around this space, go back in, look at his notes, really think about how I could make this make more sense, be a little bit more grounded, less designed. And I think in the end it really works. We found the balance, but it really is like then, Mary talking to her creative team, her creative producers, and then coming back to me and giving me her notes, because it really, really is ultimately about her vision. And so that's always most important to me, but it's good to have these other perspectives of your work, and then I think it always makes it better.
So the way that I learned about Michigan people always being willing to jump in a lake is because when the first day, the day before we shot, we shot our last vignette first, and we had a really big cast for that. And they all came, they all saw the lake, and they all jumped into the lake with clothes on. And they told me that's the Michigan way. You don't put a swimsuit on or anything, you just jump in your clothes. And I was like, okay, great. And our AD was there, and I was like, on that note, we have no multiples. And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, yeah, we buy everything secondhand. We have no multiples, and everybody's jumping in their clothes into the water in each and every one of our stories. So, yeah.
Oh my God.
So he had to rework the schedule around the fact that we had no multiples, because we needed to do a ton of scenes before they got into the water, or we had to put in time for me to just run and dry everything really quickly. And
Indie spirit, indie innovation, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's like I got my steps in because it was like, okay, gotta go back to the trailer, change, and I need to put this clothes in the dryer, and then you're gonna shoot this scene again in like 15 minutes when it's kind of dry, but it was intense. Like every day he came to me and he was like, no multiples, and I was like, no multiples still, I'm sorry. So it was.
You just made me realize an instance of that in my movie, if you'll indulge me sharing this anecdote. So Amateur is about a 14-year-old basketball player. He's at home waiting for his he's at school waiting for his parents to pick him up. He's wearing a gray hoodie, and we shot, out of order completely. Something went wrong, and so when he gets picked up by his parents, he's wearing a red hoodie. So I went to Staten Island, where the actor Michael is from. After we'd wrapped, I got Sony to give me a camera for free, lenses for free, and I went and I shot him walking, and he puts a hoodie on top of a hoodie. And I'm like, if I shoot it on a wide angle, no one will notice. And so if you look at the credits of Amateur, there's a New York unit, and it's one guy, the cameraman.
You saved the picture.
No one ever asked me a question. I'm like, I've never seen a person put a hoodie on over a hoodie in my life, but no one asked. So, how about you?
Yeah, we, with a movie as subtle as Sunfish, the difference in the tone of a music cue can make a huge difference. And we went back and forth a couple times on what ended up being the biggest, longest cue of the film. Where, let's see if I can describe this without giving anything away, but it's where the main character of the vignette is trying to catch this, supposedly, this huge fish in Green Lake. And so as that vignette is increasing in intensity, the music, of course, is following along, and as it resolves at the end, it's left hanging a little bit. We're not quite sure what's happening. And so when I scored it the first time through, my interpretation was that it was sad. And so I came out of the action part of it into kind of a, somber minor key and translated sad, and Sierra was quick to come back and said, "Oh yeah, no, that's not really it. It's not that sad. It's a little, it's okay. That's what we want to communicate. That it's okay. and there's a little hope underpinning. So, reharmonizing a little bit, and one of the other things I did through this movie is because there are so many characters in, it's 4 separate vignettes with 4 groups of actors, and so you can't assign music melodies to actors at all. So the only consistent character in this film is Green Lake, and so I have a musical melody that is my Green Lake theme that pops up here and there. So at the end of this big cue, I morph out of our action cue into a slightly hopeful, not too sad version of the Green Lake theme to bring us to the next vignette. So.
When that didn't work, did you ever go dun dun dun
Yeah,
dun?
right. Yeah. No, that was very tempting.
I think, when movies come out, most people aren't aware of in the credits who does what and how many, the fact that it takes a village and everything. So when you guys think about your work on these films, is there a specific something that you really want the credit for, that you're really proud of, that you point to and say, like, that was I'm really proud of that moment in the film?
That last answer was mine.
Okay,
for me.
you already got that one.
The fact that I think it might be a little too subtle. So if you go see it and find me and let me know if you could pick out that Green Lake theme throughout, because I think it shows up maybe 4 times in the film. Yeah.
It's not usually what you want to hear from someone who saw the movie, but us knowing what you just said, if we came to you, then we would say, it's okay.
That's right.
Right? That's
right.
what you
That's
want to
good.
hear
Yeah,
in this
that's
case.
right.
It is okay. It's okay.
It's okay.
How about, yeah?
I think just last night during our celebration party, some of the people who are from Green Lake approached me and they were like, how did you do it? Like, how did you understand, as somebody who's not from Green Lake, what Green Lake people look like and what they wear, and how did you get it so accurate? And I was like, I just saw pictures of it and just analyzed what everybody was wearing, and that was just a moment that brought me so much joy. And then there was another moment where in the scene where they're trying to catch this big fish, they are also being chased by the police. And the neighbors started talking about the police being on the lake and what had happened, and like there are boats and there's police boats and stuff like that, and we were like, yeah, it's a movie, it's not the real police. But we were like, we did a pretty good job if people are thinking that the police are out there and like that they're actually trying to catch someone on the lake, because it looks so good and so authentic. And like that was one of the most stressful parts for us, because we didn't know where to get the cars, the boats, the decals, the uniforms, because in LA you just go and rent it, but in Green Lake, Michigan, that's not the case. So when people started talking like, oh yeah, we saw the police yesterday on the lake and they were chasing someone, we were like, yeah, you did, sure, yes, that was the police. So.
Yeah, I think, Ruth, you nailed it. It's the authenticity of the environment. So for my world, okay, the one thing that my decorator and I were talking about this, Kylie Corcoran, we were with people at our screening and we're like, what's the build? So we always want to know, so we patchworked an apartment together. So we built half the apartment and then we shot the other half on location. And there's a delineation in what was built and what is on location. And, the location informed us of the architecture. But we always want to know, like, can you tell what was on the stage? That's a big one, is like it feeling like we're really in the world. And then I would also say, like, the other part of that is the motel we designed, when we found it, the photos of it, it was like very 70s, and it had carpet and wood paneling, and it was kind of this perfect time capsule. But then when we got there, it was completely rehabbed, white walls, rubber lino floors, brushed nickel everywhere. And we'd already decided that was it because of the direct line it had to the beach. And so we went in there and put up 1940s wallpaper, carpet, changed every little thing. We even had to change the doorknobs and keypads into, so the whole motel is a complete transformation. And I think what I want, like what I need to kind of share sometimes, is that that's not like that. We created that world. So I think like the before and afters of my work is very important, because otherwise you would never know. As long as it feels authentic, that's kind of the point. But it's often not, it doesn't come turnkey, so.
Right, like the better job you did, the less people would notice.
Yeah, exactly. And then also like the less it is that way in real life.
Right.
is
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the better the work.
The transformation that you did is sort of a transformation that happens through Love Brooklyn, where these characters are growing and evolving and changing in a changing city. So the transformation of and gentrification and the loss of neighborhood is a thematic character to Love Brooklyn, and to me, there's a whole new meaning, because I just got out of the Los Angeles wildfires. My wife and I had lived we had just moved into an artist commune right across from the Eaton fire, and we had been there for about 48 hours before this fire destroyed this community. And not to put a bummer on this, but you know, the sense of place and how place changes is intricately connected to your own innerscape. And I wanted to, when I was making Love Brooklyn, I really wanted the landscape and innerscape to reflect each other. And unbeknownst to my later self, which would realize that it can profoundly affect who you are and the community that you are part of. When you do an indie film, it feels like it's a community, because it's a small, you know, usually ragtag group of you know, people just you know, by sweat and by grit are making this film without multiples, and then that community changes. So it's nice to see you know, an evolution. But it's also, you know, something to understand that you know, there is a magic that's sometimes lost.
Yeah.
And that's something that old Brooklyn, you know, probably is to some people, and how Altadena, this community that I lived in, is going to be forever changed.
Yeah.
And people are going to go on. But you know, there was a moment in time where and there was a moment in a film where that took place.
And you're distilling history, like you're taking these aspects of that place and you're illuminating it, and then then it changes. It's like a living, breathing thing.
Right. Yeah. So you've got this beautiful time capsule, and you're going to, like, I saw the It's Not Over, Jeff Buckley, and we saw the East Village in the 80s and early 90s, and it's like, wow, that I remember that scene.
Yeah.
And it's film as a time capsule, as a testament to a place, is so beautiful. And it sounds like you created that with Green Lake. And when we get to, and it doesn't have to be like Brooklyn is a character, but for people who know a place, or move to a place, or for the people who Google what happened on on this street corner from this film, you know, it's important.
We have time for maybe a couple questions if anyone has any.
Just to go off of what you were talking about, while I was watching Love Brooklyn, I had heard it referenced as like a love letter to Brooklyn, but I was like thinking about the title, and I felt like it was a love letter from Brooklyn, you know? And that was really beautiful in the way that you did the edit and like everything that you're talking about right now.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it is Love, Brooklyn. So it's definitely like this is this place giving you some support, giving you some love, giving you an opportunity to, like, I'm changing. You should change too. You can too. You can evolve.
Nice.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question for Brian. So I'm an editor, and it's always interesting working with composers because I've always had the opportunity of working with composers who are just giving us stuff while we're cutting. So just sort of dumps, like, here's a bunch of scary stuff, here's a bunch of melancholy, like, and obviously the director will give them some direction in terms of tone and instrumentation and stuff like that. And so I'm curious, like, have you had the opportunity to do that? Do you have a preference of that versus like what you're describing with temp? Which I agree. I always think, like, I've tried to describe music to composers, and it does just make them crazy. Because I'm like, that, I'll be like, I think it needs more, percussion. And meanwhile, it's like, what I mean is more rhythm. So now I'll just be like, the part where it goes like, and be like, and they're like, yes. So I'm just curious how you prefer to work.
Yeah, so far in my film scoring career, I haven't had the chance to work with a film project where I could start scoring early in their process. I think that would be really fun because I would think the growth of the project together would lead to some interesting things. And yeah, learning to interpret each individual director's percussion equals rhythm. That's part of the fun to me. Is as long as we can get done by the deadline, and we're not making changes because the percussion isn't fast enough, it's all fine. But that's the working with the same director across many films is great because once you understand each other's language. And he or she can reference back to, remember that thing we did on that one, jump scare or whatever it was? Can we do something like that here? Or yeah, so it's always fun working. Sorry, what am I trying to say? I think it would be fun. What I meant to say was I have done projects for television shows that were more like that, where I did a library of 120 cues or something and fed them to them, and they basically cut to my music. And it was cohesive because I did them knowing that these were only for one show, and so that was kind of like that, but without the ability to focus and rehash and really make it what it needed to be. So yeah,
I think that's a big part about what makes a collaboration and shorthand happen when you do get the opportunity to work with the same crew and the same keys together, because you do develop this shorthand. You're in a foxhole together, and once you get out, you've always been in that foxhole, and you'll never forget the collaboration and the shorthand that you had and the trust that you had from the initial experience. So every time I do work with I get the opportunity to work with an actor or director or a producer who we've been there before. And remember that thing you did? Yeah, you could do that. And you also get to get that trust factor where in editing there's. One of the worst things that you could hear is someone saying, "Is that the best take?" Like some director say, "Did you choose the best?" And I have no, I actually chose the second best
for me that's this is going to be great when it's mixed.
Right.
It's like that's the mix.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
Right.
one more.
Ruth, what's the outfit you're most proud of?
Sunfish?
Yeah. Oh wow.
It's not a specific outfit, but it's like that little thing that you put in that you hope that somebody picks up and nobody notices, but you still love it a lot. In Resident Bird, there's two sisters, and I was trying to find a way to say they have a very similar style. Trying to pick up from my own relationship with my sister and Sierra's relationship with her sisters and everything. When you have a sister, your styles are very similar, and you tend to borrow things from each other's closets. But still, we were trying to differentiate these two people a lot. So if you watch the film carefully, the younger sister, Blue, despite her having like obviously a more blue palette of clothing, she is wearing very like solid fabrics and like a bit less textural. While Robin, she has like a more of a pinkish palette, but it's all knits and it's like softer and more interesting and like cut in more kind of like more urban ways. So in like to express that she was like leaving this town and going into the city and like a little bit of a wider vision. So, you know, it was one of those things that I didn't tell Sierra. I just like did it and I was like, nobody's gonna notice, but I love this. So yeah, that. No, she doesn't know yet. One day she will notice, don't tell her yet.
Well, I'm hearing temp score coming behind us. Do you hear that music? I think we're being played off.
It could be a lot better.